I think the recent results from Gallup's World Poll suggested that there are two things that are on the minds of more people around the world than anything else: jobs and education. We won't worry about jobs, but we will worry about education in this conversation. So we begin with you, DW. On the notion of education, what is the Texas High School Coaches Association doing to help coaches with this broader idea of the role that education plays beyond just doing what is necessary to keep a young man or young lady eligible to play the game?
Of course, you know, in Texas, we have a no pass, no play rule, which came in, and coaches were concerned about it when it first came on board. But it's been a real positive deal. But I think the vast majority of our coaches do a great job of checking the kids' grades and keeping them on top of things and making sure that they understand what it takes to achieve their goals. And of course, a lot of those players' goals are to play somewhere in college, and there's some of them that you need to help understand, you know, what it's going to take for you to get to college, and what are the things that it takes. And we've got of course a recruiting webinar that we make available to our coaches that helps them understand all the NCAA rules that go along with that, which are always changing. So we try to educate our coaches, our kids, and our parents on those things as far as the educational concerns.
You guys have been great with your transparency, and I so appreciate that, and it's going to be helpful to a lot of people because of it. But let's ask the difficult question for the sake of the interview and the time. What's more important, the grades or the score on the scoreboard, Coach?
Well, I think in the end, obviously, it's what happens to the kid's life and what he ends up and how he ends up. Yeah, the most immediate impact is a victory or not a victory, and you hear that all the time. But I think what can help you go to sleep at night or get up the next day is, you know, why did you get in this business? It probably wasn't to win. It was to truly change people's lives, and because somebody changed your life at some point and got you where you are. So if you can keep that in perspective, I think it makes you a better football coach on Friday night, because the pressure, you don't have the pressure that you would have if it had to be a victory.
Mm-hmm. Coach Rucker, in your experience, has there been a material difference between the expectation levels at the college game with respect to education, juxtapose the high school game? It seems like it's more of an institution at the collegiate level. So can you speak to that?
Well, the bottom line is, you know, all the fans, all the coaches, everyone wants you to win. I really believe this, Spencer. If you do everything to help the young man be successful from football, the winning takes care of itself. And you know, one of the things that the NCAA did years ago, and I'm so happy they did it, is the 75% rule. You have to make progress toward graduation every year. It's no more of this, take the electives and just be eligible. Because when I was coming through, guys my age did not finish school. They stayed eligible to play. So what did winning do? Because you see coaches move on because of the schedule, because of their record, and the kid gets left behind. So my point is, to answer your question, if you take care of the young man, the heart and soul of the young man, the winning takes care of itself.
Mm-hmm. I think Glen started down this path a little bit, but do you think there's a need to redefine what constitutes winning at either level? I mean, it's just an open-ended question you guys can tackle as you choose. Reconstituting what it means to actually win. What does it mean? Do we need to redefine that?
Well, every year we go to a banquet at the AFCA, and typically for a lot of years, the teams that won that year, as far as had more kids graduate, the graduation rate was the highest. A lot of times those coaches were fired after that year. So, you know, I think what we know is right and what the public looks at are two different things. So when you go to you go to redefine that. I think there's a balance, and also what Ken said, I firmly believe, and that is the winning will take care of itself if you're doing the right things.
How do you balance mentoring a kid who wants to forego their eligibility or their time in college for the next level? I know that there's an infrastructure in place, but some people think that that's a little bit weighted and maybe not truly fair, because if you're a college coach and that athlete can help your team, you want them to stay around for another year perhaps. How do you weight that? How do you balance that?
You see it. You see it in football. You see it mostly in basketball. Guys going 1 year, 2 years out the gate, gone. I think if it's benefiting the young man and his family, there's a time, because we all go to college to better ourselves, to make enough money to provide for our families and all those kinds of things. And again, I get back to the rule. If a young man's on schedule, and in football it's better than the other sports because you have to stay through your junior year. Well, by the time you get through your junior year with summer school and all the classes, the 15 hours or 12 hours, you have to maintain 12 to be eligible. But lots of times you can take 15 hours. But what I'm saying is by the time you get through your junior year, you're about a semester away from graduating. Because kids are graduating. I had 2 players graduate 3.5 years and got a master's. And they were red-shirted. One was no, both were red-shirted. But the bottom line was, they, after their junior year, was close to graduating anyway. And one of the neat things that we did, if a young man went off and played pro ball, left his junior year, he could come back and finish his degree. So you got the cake and you can eat it too. Now you got the money, and now you've got your education. A young man that played for one of our counterparts down in South Houston, at Pearland, he's playing pro ball now. He's one of the young men I'm speaking about. Played for me, then I stepped aside and he played for Major Applewhite there at school. But he got his degree and he got his master's.
Pick up on that, either one of you guys, on that whole idea of stressing the importance of what a true education really means. After the cheering stops, you are always in an educational process. It's not about a piece of paper that you earn one time and then you shut her down. It continues long after that. Can any of you speak to that? Just coaching that concept? Education continues?
Yeah, I think it's a real responsibility of a coach to make sure that they are a part of that athlete's academic future and the academic pathway that athlete takes. He needs to be involved in that. There needs to be someone with that athlete that's following them, checking their grades, checking with the teachers, making sure that they're doing the things that they need for education. And I think that's one of the things that's really tough with the sports community right now. I think we've got a real culture of win at all cost, and I think that's something that we really need to take a hard look at. I know when you're talking to coaches, and that's the way they make their living, and they get hired and fired on those wins and losses. But at the same time, when it comes right down to it, as far as changing that culture, I think is important. Yeah. That we get out of the culture of win at all costs, and start putting more value in education. My college coach Jim Rucker told me that he said that education is the foundation of life, and I've never forgot that. I mean, that really impacted me when he told me that. You get your education. That's your foundation for the rest of your life.
Do you think people understand what an education really is, a quote-unquote education really is? I mean, because there's some difficult truths that we've got to deal with that you guys have to wrestle with. I mean, it's not necessarily what takes place, behind the four walls of academia. And education, much of that experience takes place outside of that space.
Well, a couple of things, and goes with that. You know, when I first became a head coach, or where I'm currently at in Brenham, we had a young man that received a scholarship at Texas A&M, but didn't get in, and we held ourselves accountable for that. He didn't get in because he hadn't done the work. So at that point, our superintendent allowed us to hire an academic person to be in charge of guys and girls. It was a coach, so that we make sure they're in the proper classes, doing the things that they have to do, and handle that. And it's made a huge difference. But you're talking about the education more than just the athletic part. Just a quick story. I had a young man that we had a 7 o'clock study hall that all of our athletes used to have to go to start the day, and there was every varsity player had to do that. And one day I had to get to school early, and I came in about 5:30. And Ken knows where I'm going to go with this, but I had to come in early, and I saw something up at the front of the school. I couldn't tell what it was, and then I thought, well, it looks like a dog or something. I got closer. I said, no, it's a human being. Maybe something's wrong with him. It was a young man, and he was sleeping on his books, and he was waiting for 7 o'clock to go to the study hall. And I said, how long have you been doing this? He said, Coach, I have to do this every day. I live 27 miles out of town, and I ride into school with my brother that works at Jack in the Box, and I sleep. I get up at 4:30, and I sleep outside till 7 o'clock to go into school. I tell that story to Mac Brown. They give him a scholarship. He graduates from Texas. He's on our coaching staff right now.
How about that?
It's a true story.
Isn't that great?
Great young man, great young man. And I piggyback off a story, a quick story too. You know, the importance of education. I was coaching at Arkansas, and I was recruiting this young man out of the state of Texas. Great player, but he had some learning disabilities, and at the time, there wasn't many schools across the country that had the program for him. So we got in the fight, and we ended up signing him. But let me back up. He had a mom and dad at home. They were older. He was one of 15 or 16 kids, the youngest. Well, there was a young lady in town. She and her family took interest because he had a lower elementary reading deficiency. And she wanted to help him. So his biological parents allowed him to come live with them. From that, she opened up a civilian learning center that's still open today. Still, you know who I'm talking about. It's still open today, and she's helped hundreds of kids, regardless of an athlete or not, because of that one thing. He didn't only graduate from Arkansas. He married, started a horse farm. He's making great money, just a great individual. His coach is a personal good friend of mine, and this was like around 1990, 91. So the importance of education gets back to the kid. The seed you talked about. If you plant that seed and you water it properly, you know, good things are going to come out of the ground. And it is important. Education is important.
What about the high-performing athlete that's struggling to make the grade, the temptation involved there, maybe not wanting to sacrifice that talent for that grade? There's an ethical challenge there, is there not, Coach?
There is, and I think a lot of times what comes first, the chicken or the egg? A lot of times it may be their athletic ability that got them to a point, but a lot of times towards we have a kid that as a sophomore struggles in school, as a junior may struggle in school, but he stays with it. When he gets to be a senior, he looks up and says, wait a minute, I'm this close to getting this done, and so we have to use that. Athletics is a tool of the educational process. It's a tool to get the kid to be what he needs to be, and we say that all the time. That's our job. He wants to be with us, but in the end, all we did was drive him to where he is in his life to be successful and who he needs to be.
That's really rich there. And I'm going to flip that on its ear just a little bit and then talk about that person who may be a 2-star or a 1-star athlete that thinks he's a 5. How do you manage that kid who wants to maybe try to leave early or maybe just doesn't have a handle on who he really is? How do you motivate him to understand the role and importance of education?
Well, in as far as education, you know, that athlete in general is a tough guy to deal with.
Particularly the ones that have aspirations. They tell you that they want to play professional football, and they're really a 1 or 2. How do you manage that? I mean, that just...
How do you manage their parents?
The enablers, right? The enablers. Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that is on that recruiting webinar that we make available to our coaches, and some of it is you know, when you look at the statistics that of how many kids get a major college scholarship, and how many kids go to the pros, and what's the
percentages.
What's the percentage that you're
yeah.
looking for there? And so to me, I think you've got to get them out of their bubble.
Mm-hmm.
You
See,
know?
DW, you're hitting a powerful metaphor. Back to that whole metaphor thing, 330 kids are going to get drafted every year. Of those 330, 150 won't be on that roster the following year. Right. When you go speak to programs, you speak to schools, I guarantee you, if I've got 80 to 105 kids in one program, I'll ask them the question, how many of you guys think you got a shot at making the pros? I guarantee you 80% of them in that room raise their hands. I said, okay, by the numbers, that means everybody at Georgia, everybody at Tennessee, everybody at someone else not gonna make it. Are you telling me you really believe that there won't be anybody off of Tennessee, Georgia's, Alabama, you name it, Clemson's roster that won't make it? Because if all of you do. So when you get them wrestling with that reality, you know, that's just one more tool. It may not be the thing, but it's like a steady drip wearing a hole in a rock. You can get them to push them forward and say, you know what, maybe he thought he was saying was true, man. Better get that education. What are the tools that you use to push that? What can you do?
Well, 1% of those kids are 1% or less are not going to make it. Mm-hmm. So you got to bring in examples of guys that left early. We talked about leaving early. From the collegiate level to go into the NFL, those kids that don't even get drafted, bring someone like that they know that didn't even get drafted, was promised a first-round draft choice and didn't even get drafted or selected even to be a free agent. You know, that happens all the time. So what you got to do, you got to put those folks in front of them and show them proof and continue to tell them that, hey, if everyone graduates from college, that's 100%. Which do you like, 100% or 1%? Mm-hmm. But they say, well, Coach, that's not me. What you got to do, you got to keep after them. Mm-hmm. And the thing I tell them too, and we've told them in the past, if you're not doing it for us here, how are you going to do it for the next level? You got to get on the field here first. And lots of times that's tough love, but honesty is the best policy.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit about this whole notion of life skills. It's really important because we know now by the science in a recent Harvard study that suggested that resiliency, for example, is a more reliable indicator of whether or not a person is going to succeed or fail in life, even more so than academic performance. We know that academics are important, they always will be. But what we now know also along with that fact is that the ability to bounce back from defeat, because you're competing against a global context that's being fueled by information technology, has upped the ante. So you gotta be able to bounce back and bounce back and bounce back. How do you integrate the teaching of social skills or those types of soft skills that really are the undergirding of their success? How do you do that?
I think that, I think for coaches, I think that coaches have a major task and a minor task when they deal with their kids. And I'm talking about high school coaches. I think their major task is in teaching those soft skills. And their minor task is in teaching the skills of the games and the technique of the game. Not that that's not important, but the most important thing that we do for those kids is teach those intangibles. Teach the leadership skills. Teach them how to be have a strong work ethic. Teach them all the things that make them be a great person, you know. And a lot of times, I think, especially some of our young coaches, pass over that as being corny, but it's not corny. It's the most important things that we have to offer, the educational process. And we've got an opportunity to teach those things like no other place in education. You know, you think about it, coaches they get a chance to work with hundreds of young kids on almost a daily basis at a very teachable time in their lives, and talk to them about those things that's not talked about real frankly. Can you think of any place where those intangibles are talked about in education other than in athletics or extracurricular activities? It doesn't happen, but yet it's like you were saying with those statistics earlier. You know, there's a Harvard study that says that 80% of the reasons for success, accomplishment, and promotion out in the business world are because of your attitudes and your character traits, and only 15% because of your technical expertise. So, I mean, we're teaching, those are some of the most important lessons that they can get in school, and they're getting them through athletics.
That's good.
You know, one of the things, and Coach is so right with what he's saying. We have a 5-minute listening period every day, and a different coach gets up and talks. And he doesn't talk about football, what we're going to do that day. He talks about whatever he wants, a life lesson. And I've learned so many things from listening to our other coaches talk. They're so powerful. But another thing that we're able to do that is not that hard, because your community will back you on this 100%. We're having one February the 8th, an etiquette dinner. Where we bring our athletes in and we dress in their nicest clothes, and we bring in a lady to show them this fork is used for this, this is used for this, so that you won't embarrass yourself when you go, you go out to eat with your girlfriend, your wife, or a job. Then we bring in 60 people around the town, and we have an interview process where you learn how to interview, and then they critique them and tell them what they need to do differently through an interview process. So, you know, those kinds of things are, when you're talking about education, that's education. And, you know, and again, another sidebar to this is people don't get you if they're with you. And so if they're in there and they're teaching that tool, then they go home that night and they say, you know, that coach isn't a bad guy. You know, he's teaching those kids some good things. So, you know, if you don't win every game, but he's teaching them good lessons. So it works for us too.
That's good. I like that. I like that transparency too. You're right. They can't get you.
We did the same thing 16 years when under Coach Brown. He would take the freshmen in the spring, and we'd take them down to Ruth Chris, real nice restaurant, and set them down with a lady and go through table etiquette. And I tell you a story of what paid off. You know, they teach you the manners of getting up when the lady leaves and when she comes back and that kind of thing. And so we're out at the Rose Bowl and getting ready to play, and the queen and her court came in, and all our guys stood up. Wow, and the SC guys kind of looked around and said, what's wrong with these guys? But it's those small detailed things that you're trying to educate a young man to do when he's away from you. You know, Mama used to say, how was little Ken when he was over at your house? He was a darling angel. So that's what Mama wants to hear. She wants to know that you're doing good when the eyes aren't on you.
Glenn kind of talked about it a little bit, so we'll end with this one for this segment. How can you as coaches, the head of a nonprofit organization whose mission it is to support coaches and help them help kids, how can you work together with parents, principals, teachers, administrators on the success of the athletes in the classroom? Are there some ways that you're working together with those individuals?
You know, the state sets up, first of all, that you, as Coach Rutledge said earlier, you have to pass in order to play. Well, that's the first tool. You take that guy that's a freshman and he doesn't really want to go to school. He knows he has to pass to play. So that's motivation there. Then once it's past that, as you said, everybody thinks they're a pro athlete. Well, you want to go to college? Well, you can't just pass. You have to take the right classes. You have to have a certain GPA because there's a sliding scale. So that's another step in a direction. And parents are going to be a part of that because they want their kids to do it as well. So I think we have some things in place that are moving in that direction. And again, then they get close to their graduation time and they realize this is important and didn't really know it was going to happen. Almost like a degree plan. You're just going and taking the classes you're supposed to take, and you look up and you have 15 hours till you graduate, and it works a lot that way.
Any other thoughts on that?
I think most programs, or a lot of programs, are like Coach West, and we hope that all of them become like the program that Coach West has there at Brenham. But we encourage our coaches to have parent meetings and talk to the parents about the grades and expectations and those things. I think that's critical. But I think what Glen is saying as far as what the state has set up and what is required, I think just communicating that to the athletes and communicating that to the moms and dads out there is critical. And a lot of times that comes back down to the head coach of getting that done.
Absolutely.
And once we get them, lots of times they're first generation college. And so mom and dad, grandma, they want them to get that degree because you go into the homes and you say, hey, little Johnny's going to graduate. Well, there's a criteria you got to follow, little Johnny. You got to go to class. You got to go to study hall. We've got those things in place. And then if his ability on the field gets him to where he's been looked at by the next league, chances are he may come out. But we've got him on the right track to graduate. And in order for you to, and lots of times they come to us just wanting to play football. But by the time you get them to the junior year, if you can get them to the junior year, that's all changed.
This is kind of off schedule, but we'll continue on with the subject to close it out. But this is one of those nuanced things that I've really discovered. It's like, how do you say it? The education process is really important. We get it. We understand that. But even if you do have that degree, a lot of times, and this gets back to that global competition context, it's almost like a PSL or private seat license. You don't own the ticket. You don't get a chance. It's just a ticket to be in the fight. You still got to have all those other skills that you've been talking about.
That's right.
That's going to allow you to thrive and stay relevant in that process. That degree is an opportunity to compete. It's like a private seat license.
Yeah. Yes.
You don't own it. Here's your opportunity to compete.
Yes.
But did they give you the starting tailback job?
No, sir.
You had to go get it.
Had to go get it. Yes, sir.
And there were probably times that your leg was hurt or something happened and you had to learn to push through it. I think that's the beauty of athletics.
Yeah, no doubt.
Makes you stronger in all the other areas too. When the going gets tough gets going,
Well, thank you guys for giving us the tools crowned around this notion of education that will allow us and youngsters to come to compete. It's good. Thank you.